Okay, so tonight we are picking up with the Mishnah Chavav and Aleph on the top. This Mishnah is coming off of the last Mishnayos, so let's just review those. Chafim and Aleph, the Mishnah, Oraysa said, maybe get me Medinas Hayam. Someone comes, he brings a get from far out, Medinas Hayam, v'amram b'fani nechtav u'b'fani nechtav. So like the Mishnah Gittin tells us, he comes and he says, b'fani nechtav u'b'fani nechtav, in order that the get should be accepted properly. Lo yisas ishto. Okay, so he gives the get, he's the shlech. She takes the get, she's divorced. But the Mishnah says he's not supposed to marry this woman. Mace, if he dies, if he says Mace harakti b'ragnor, someone comes with testimony that a woman's husband had died far out somewhere, or he says I killed him, or he says they killed him. Lo yisas ishto. So he cannot marry his wife. Rabbi Yehuda harakti lo tinas ishto. Haragnuhu tinas ishto. Rabbi Yehuda Tana argues on the first time, he says that it depends. If he says I killed him, then not only does he not marry the wife, she cannot be married out. Meaning we don't trust his Edus. We're going to skip the piece of Gemara today, but right, is he a good aid? He says I killed someone. He's a Rusech, according to his Edus. Haragnuhu tinas ishto. He says, according to the way the Gemara explains, that they killed him, not including himself. They killed him. I was there with them. So then he's accepted. Right, so the Mishnah, the idea of the Mishnah is what? That we have to determine whether a person who is used in the woman's marrying, right, used in the Edus, or in the giving of a get of a woman to allow her to remarry a Neishes Ish, to now have her not be a Neishes Ish, do we have to suspect that maybe something is fishy here and he's just trying to marry her? And therefore, he's trying to give her a fake get, or therefore he's trying to say testimony which is not true. So that's the idea of the Mishnah. The next Mishnah continues with the idea, chacham sha'osar se'isha b'neder abala. A chacham, right? A woman had a neder that was between her and her husband, and the chacham, right, comes and says, yeah, the neder is also, you can't. He's not matter it. Haraysa lo yisana. Because he can't marry her for the same reason. What is he doing? We're suspecting maybe the reason why he wants to keep the neder between her and her husband is because now he's going to divorce her, and then he'll be able to marry her. So lo yisani, he can't marry her out of that suspicion. Miano shecholza b'fanav. If this chacham was part of a bezdin to officiate a mi'un or a chalitza, then he said he could. There's other people involved, not just him. It's him and two others. And Gemara says even one other. There's another person here, and for sure here he's even two, that it takes away the suspicion, right? If there's shakranus, something false here, then what are the other two people going to suspect all of them? In fact, so that's the Mishnah here. We're going to start today. All these people, Rashi says, of the previous two Mishnayos that had their own wives at the time of when the story happened, when he brought the get, when he said the testimony, all right, when he made the neder, he kept the neder also. All these men, if they had their own wives at the time of that story, and then their wives died, then the whole thing's fine. We don't have to suspect that they were interested, they got attracted to this woman, they had their own wife. Says the Mishnah, another kula. Any of these examples where the woman in the interim, right, she got divorced, she accepted the testimony, she got married to some other man, and then it says the Mishnah, the other man divorced her or died. Now, at this point we say, okay, the suspicion's off, and therefore they could get married to the chacham, to the one who brought the get, to the one who said the testimony on the misa. The third heter is that even though we're saying suspicions, it's only to themselves. But their family members, the way the Mishnah itself says, their children or their brothers of the chacham, of the one who brought the get, it's fine. They can marry them. Says the Gemara, so the beginning of the Mishnah said that in the event that these men who were suspecting, if they had wives and their wives died, so then we don't have to suspect for the attraction before they had their own wives. But it's mashma only meso niskarshu. If they go on ahead and divorce their wives, so then we have to suspect that the whole reason why they're divorcing their wives is because they were attracted to this other woman, and that was the whole story. Why? They did this in order to get married to them. Amar le Ravil Rav Ashi Vatanya Finis Garshu, but the Oraysa says not like that. It sounds like even if they're divorced, says the Oraysa, even if they end up getting divorced, we allow these women to get married to the man who is involved in their becoming a non-ishes ish. Lekasha hodahavya katata hodulavi katata. The answer to this is whether there was a fight between the man who officiated or was involved in the gerushin or misa. Right? If there was a fight between that man and his own wife before the gerushin, so then we don't have to worry. If there was no fight and all of a sudden it comes up, then we have to worry. And just by saying the second version is to say really there was no fight. But it depends. We have to look into the story and see who's the initiator, who's being margal who in the fight. There was no fight beforehand. All of a sudden there's a fight. Well, let's look into see what's happening. If it's who, if he's the one that initiated, so we have a suspicion there. Why is he creating a fight between him and his wife? It looks a little fishy that maybe he was attracted to this other woman. He's creating a fight to eventually make the divorce to his own wife and then get married to this other woman. If she was the one that brought up the fight, there's nothing to do with the whole suspicion. So then we don't have to suspect. Being that the katata is coming from her, there's nothing to worry about. Last piece of Gemara, v'kula shenisu. Now this is a really interesting Gemara. Gemara says, right, the Mishnah said, in the event that these women married someone else in the interim, and then there was a gerushin or misa, and the second husband, so now it's fine. Mutar l'nasi lahen, they're mutar. So kasal kadaitok misa, the gerushin or gerushin. So the Gemara we thought in the first, initially in the base medrash, that of all the cases that we gave certain cases where a man comes and says, this Ish's husband, he died. Right? That was one case. Then we have a case where we said he brought a get, or chacham neder and then he divorced her. So those are gerushin cases. We thought that in this line of the Mishnah, we're saying that they're all mutter to marry to others. They get married to others, and they got divorced. The case of gerushin there is going back even on the case of gerushin, where they got divorced previously. So they got divorced twice now for the first husband, and now in this Mishnah, the second husband. Then the Mishnah says, okay, he could go and marry her. And also the misa, the case where it says nis almanu, their husband died the second time. It's also going back in the case where this man comes from Medina Siam, and he said in the Mishnah Chafahim and Aleph that Mace, her first husband, died. So she ended up having a misa choice for two different husbands had died, being married to her. So Neima Masidula Karebi. So if that's the way you understand the Mishnah, then the Mishnah seems not to be like Rebbe. The Karebi Hamra betrays him and you have a chazaka. If you're familiar with the Machlok Zarish and Galil, do we say chazaka is with 2 or 3 times? So Rebbe's opinion is 2 times, and therefore we should be nervous, at least in the case of Misa. This is a katlanis, as we call it katlanis in the sugya later in Yevamos. Really, it's more in there sugya, it's more arichos. So here it's just bekitzer. Katlanis, 2 twice already, her husband had died, so she's a katlanis. And this is fascinating. Rashi and Tosaf Machlokes are on the gerushin or gerushin. Is this dafka? What about is the Gemara asking on the gerushin or gerushin also? Sounds like it. So Rashi learns the kipshuto. A woman who her husband divorced her twice, is this a woman not a katlanis, but a woman who her husband's divorced her? So maybe that would also be something which would stop us from letting him get married to her. We don't want the woman to marry a third man and basically have a chazaka that her husband divorced her. Tosafos says on the top it's lav dafka. I believe Rashi says it is dafka. So that's an interesting machlokes we showed him. How do we look at gerushin? Tosafos says it could be many gerushin, doesn't matter. Sharli nasi kipshuto. This is not something which is the mazel of the woman. Fine, yesh line in that. Says the Gemara, Allah, misa gerushin gerushin misa. So again, Rashi will take it bedafka in both. Tosafos will take one of them as dafka, but the point is that it could even be shitas Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. It can even be shitas Rebbe. I'm sorry, that 2 times the chazaka, and it's not 2 times because mix and match the cases. When we say shinis garashu, we'll say it's going back in the case of misa, not in the gerushin. That's the Rashi. Tosafos, you don't need to see it. When it says nis almanu, they had a second misa, not a second misa. It's the first misa. We're going in the case where he came with the get, so it was a gerushin. Great. Says the Gemara, the last piece of Gemara in the Perek V'Gum Madarat L'Bnei L'Amchei, the end of the Mishnah says that they're all murder to the relatives, the children and the brothers. So the question is, Ma'ishno Mihodetanan. So the Mishnah says, and we really switch it to the side as the time, it should be a brayso. Hanita min ha'isha, osir b'imu bita. Someone who's, there's a suspicion that he was mizana with a woman. So it says in the brayso that not only do we say he can't marry that woman, also he's usher to marry the woman's mother or daughter, ubachus or her sister. And the hesber behind this price is because we're afraid that why is he getting married to the relatives? Because he knows that relatives always, have get-togethers. And this woman, his whole purpose was he wants to be mezana with this woman who there was already a suspicion on. So he knows that she's going to end up coming to the daughter or the mother or the sister's house, and then he'll have the availability to be mezana. So we say everything's usher. So likewise, we want to say over here also, if there's a real suspicion on this man that he is trying to officiate and be involved in the gerushin or the misa of the husband, whatever you want to call it, of this woman, and because he wants to get married to her, so let's also answer him to this woman's. Let's answer the woman to the sons or the brothers of this man, because there's going to be a closeness. Maybe the whole idea is that they're going to end up meeting up, and there's going to be more availability for zimus. So Gemara says no. Here's also getting into what the Rav was talking tonight. The differences in the motion. So first answer the Gemara is that the reality is women end up by woman relatives commonly, and men is not as much. So it's not as much of a concern. That the whole idea here was in order to marry the relatives so that they could be mazana with them. By the men in our case. Another mahalach you could say is that by the woman, it's very different. Over there, by the nita mina isha and the brayso. So what are we concerned about? We're concerned that he really is trying to be mazana with woman A. So he's going to marry the sister, and there's a great concern because what's going to happen? He'll know the sister. The sister realizes that her sister A comes over to to have a get together, and she sees that there's a relationship going on between her husband and the sister. She says, "Okay, I'm going to keep quiet because what's it going to do to me?" So he'll be mazana with the sister. So it's not going to aser me to him. I'll still be mutter to him. So I'm not going to say anything. So that's why there's a real concern. In our Mishnah, it's the reverse. You have a woman who there's a suspicion that this man is interested in her. So we say, let the woman marry the man's son. What's going to happen? Maybe she's getting married to the son in order that she can mizana with her husband's father. Well, if she's mizana, then she's an Eish Shazinsa. And therefore, her husband's going to be mad at her. It's never going to happen. Her husband's going to protect from such a situation. There's less concern. Says the Gemara, if you're telling me that there's not really concern when it comes to the Eish because Eish Shazinsa, right? Eish Shazinsa, she's a student on her husband. So then we don't have to suspect anything because he's going to protect her owner, is going to protect from the whole situation. So a father also. The Mishnah says, Kul mutaras l'bnei malachim. Why is it limited to that? Also the father. Let them marry the father. Sounds like there's some difference. But so no, it's exactly the opposite. The father's more pashut. Because for her to marry the father, the son's going to be embarrassed to be mezana with his father's wife. That's more pashut to us. So you don't have to suspect. The chiddush is in our Mishnah's case, where kulam mutaras l'baneihen, there may be a concern that the father's not going to be embarrassed to be mezana with his son's wife. So that would be more of a concern. Kamashman, even that we're not choshish. Okay, Hadrallah kids at Achiv. Ezra Hashem, we're going to start this parak, and this is more of a complicated parak, at least the first few blocks, because it's related to Zikah and Yanim. But a lot of the ideas we already came across, especially this Mishnah. I think almost every line of the Mishnah we had already, at least once, maybe twice. So it should come, at least today, pretty easy. You have 4 brothers, 2 are married to 2 sisters. We have this, that the 2 who marry the sisters die. So you have 2 women falling to Yibum, to 2 men, 2 brother-in-laws. And to have any of them do Yibum, we'll go with the Mahalach of Zikah right now, as the Gemara begins, that it would be a shiur of, is this one is Achos Kukosei. It's like his Achos Ishta almost, because Zikah is like a wife to some extent, and therefore it's the sister of the one who has a relationship with him. So that's Osir, whether it's the Oraysa or the Rabbanon, but it's Osir. We could leave the question up in the air for now. So therefore, there's still a chiyuv. The chalitza is not strong enough to patra the whole chiyuv, according to the Tana here. So therefore, it requires a chalitza, but no yibum. And here we quoted this one time a few blocks ago. Even if they go in, but they do it. They do the yibum, yotziu. We say they have to get divorced. Gemara asked the kasha from the Mishnah earlier in the second parak. There we said lo yotziu. And over here, going with the Mahalach of Zikah, we say a rule we had, so she was at one point a chusuk kaso. We say she's also forever. We don't say lamafreya. We see the brera as she became, right? One of them became this one's. One of them was lamafreya, destined to become this one's wife, and this one's wife. No, we say it was nesar shachas shuv eina niteres la'ilam. Rabbi Eliezer said it's machlokes. B'shami mekayim, it's lo misiu. It's a machlokes. B'shami actually allows them to stay. We'll see more of this in the Gemara. The same case, one of them is osur be'erva, the other one is mutter to both of them. So, osur ba mutter ba'choysa v'asheni osur b'shneim. The one who has that isur erva, so he only really has, if you look at it from the halachic standpoint, he only really has one woman falling to him, the one who's not osur to him. The one who's osur to him is not falling, b'yimum b'chlaus, and isur erva deraisa, kares, and therefore, it's not the other one is not a chusuk kasei. It's not the sister of the one who's mezukah. There's only one in Zikah. Therefore, he goes ahead and does yibum if you would like. And the second one has the same as earlier in the Mishnah, asur b'shneim, because it's a chusuk kasei at this point. And even after the other one does yibum, if he does, you still have a kivash neser sha'achas shuv asur lamas, right? The sister, she was at one point a chusuk kasei, so therefore she's going to be asur forever. Is there meant to but in the event that that was not an Isser Erba, it's either Isser Lav or it's an Isser Shnia, so that in Midaraisa, from a Daraisa standpoint, whether Achuz Kos is Daraisa or Darabanan, but from a Daraisa standpoint, we see both of them falling to Yibum, and therefore it's also to the Yibum, they would have to have Chalitza. Even that one. Even the one that has the Isser and Nisr to Kaddish. The other one still needs Chalitza from it. Cannot do Yibum. This is the quoted on Daf Tes in that complicated Gemara, right? If both of them each have, one of them is an Isser Erva, but not the same one, so then each one could take the one that's not Isser to them. That's the famous line that we quoted on Daf Tes. Says the Gemara, Shema Mina Yesh Zikah, so you go back to the Iker din of the Mishnah. The initial reaction is, apparently, there's Zikah. The whole understanding of why the first line of the Mishnah, there's Chalitza and Yibum, must be a function of Zikah. The E ain't Zikah. If you wouldn't hold of Zikah, and Rashi always clarifies, and this is, look at the first Rashi, he says it all the time. Yesh Zikah ain't Zikah, like we've been having, doesn't mean, to the full 6. Everyone agrees there's a connection, there's a mitzvah. Say, we'll discuss later the question about that. But there's a Oraysa relationship, she can't just marry Lashok. So there's something there. The question is Kloimar is actually Chomer Zikah L'Shava Chusukukol, so can Chusishta. That's the famous line Rashi always says. Is it strong enough to create more of the relationship? Legabi more nafkamina. So here it's like a nafkamina of making a chusukukos. So Rashi says that. So Shemamina Yeshik, you see the Zikah has that potential, has an ability to do that. The Ein Zikah, if you hold that Ein Zikah can't do that. So we don't see the relationship to the sister. Michti Hani Mitrei Balti Kaasyon. Both of these two women, each one is coming from two different houses, two different husbands. Highly Yavam Mechada, Highly Mechada. What's stopping any one of them from doing Yibum? Right? There's a mitzvah of Yibum on either one of them, so I'll pick one of them. And yeah, in a Chanami, once he picks one, he can't do Yibum to the other. It's a sister. That's a mamish and Isser Erva Oraysa. But in the initial falling, the Nephilos, each one is completely mutter. The Gemara says, I could respond, Ein Zikah, and this we had these two pshatim. There's a different problem. An Isser to eventuate a potential bittul mitzvah Yevamos. As the Gemara explains, let's say one of them goes and does Yibum, like it's mutter. Maybe the other one will end up dying, the other brother will come about to mitzvah Yevamos. At this point, it's going to be Achosishto, the other woman. Therefore, the Yibum / Chalitza, that whole Zikah relationship is batal. So there's no mitzvah anymore, Yibum Chalitza. Therefore, we may say, do Chalitza from them, and then even if the other man dies, okay, so he still has the mitzvah of Yibum Chalitza to the other sister, will do Chalitza then. As Achos Chalitza, it's only the Rabbanan, Achos Chalitza. Says the Gemara, if you're telling me ain't Zikah, and the whole problem is also about the mitzvah Yevamos, why is the Mishnah telling me a case of 4 brothers? You can even be 3 brothers. 3 brothers, 2 are married to 2 sisters, they both die. There are 2 women falling to the 3rd brother now. And yeah, it's true, ain't Zikah, that's true. So Midaraisa, you can marry any one of them. But the Mishnah would say don't do that because it's Levat Musiyam. He marries one of them, now the second woman is out of a husband. There's no other brother-in-law to do Yibum with. So why didn't it speak of that? And Ihachi is as opposed to in the Mahalach of Yeshika, there's no kasha. If you go with Yeshika, that was obvious. They were saying a bigger Chiddush. In Yeshika, by three brothers, like we had in the second parak, it's more pashut that Achosu Kukos is an issue because two brothers married two sisters, both die. Two women fall into Yibum to the third one. Now Yeshika has a big Achosu Kukos. It's not like two brothers where you could potentially say, one woman is for one brother, one is for the other. They're both under the same. So for sure Yeshika is going to stop them from Yibum. The Chiddush of the Mishnah is even by four brothers where you have two potential, mailboxes, one woman for one and one woman for the other. So still, we say there's an issue of Zikah. But in the Mahalach of Ein Zikah, the whole is Ashlevat speak out by three. Gemara says again, even there Lo Mivai Kamrin. That's also more pashut. Lo Mivai to also Davadim B'Tul Mitzvah. By three, it's obvious. You're for sure being Mevatel the Mitzvah because there's two brothers, married to two sisters. They both die. Both are falling to the third brother. There's only one brother here, the third brother. If he's gonna do Yibum to one, the other one's out completely, no question. Vadai, that's the Vadai. But the Chiddush of the Mishnah by four brothers. That's not so pashut because who's ever choshish for the whole amisa? This whole idea of that choshish that one's going to do Yibum, then all of a sudden the second one will die, is really a chash. To work Kamashmalom, we're even choshish there. Gemara says if you're really choshish, also by five you should be choshish. Misa, the tree lechashinon. We're not choshish for the misa of two. So in Chanami, if there's five brothers, two married, two sisters, they both die. In that case, we're actually going to let the first brother who wants, whoever's the oldest, I guess, would be Lachachila, whoever wants, could go do Yibum to one. At that point, you have one woman falling left, and now they could just, the second brother who wants to do it, could do another Yibum. That's the din over here. According to the opinion of Ein Zikah. If you go to Yeshika, B'chamisha not. If you go to Yeshika, then there's Achosu Kukosu to all the brothers, and it's just going to be Usr. So the Mishnah would apply even there. Okay. I'll pick up tomorrow, Bez Hashem, with Amar.